The flight attendant's voice came over the intercom at 35,000 feet. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some turbulence. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts." Normal announcement. Standard procedure. Except for one problem. The flight attendant who made that announcement was standing in the aisle when passengers heard her voice. She wasn't near the intercom. Her mouth wasn't moving. And when passengers looked at her in confusion, she went pale. She heard it too. Her own voice. Coming from the speakers. But she hadn't said anything. Then the voice came again. "This is your final warning. Return to your seats. We're going down in 17 minutes." Panic spread through the cabin. Passengers started screaming. The flight attendant ran to the cockpit. The pilots heard it too. But no one had transmitted anything. The intercom system showed no activity. And 17 minutes later, nothing happened. The flight landed safely. But every single person on that plane heard the same voice. A voice that shouldn't have existed. And before I tell you what investigators discovered about this flight and other cases where impossible voices were heard by everyone on board, make sure you subscribe and hit that like button, because what you're about to hear will make you never feel safe at 35,000 feet again. Air travel is supposed to be predictable. Announcements follow scripts. Procedures are standardized. Everything is controlled and monitored. But sometimes, passengers and crew experience things that can't be explained. Things that shouldn't be possible. Voices that come from nowhere. Announcements that were never made. Warnings that don't make sense. And the terrifying part is that everyone hears them. Not just one person. Not a hallucination. Entire planes full of people experiencing the same impossible phenomenon. These are those flights. These are the cases where something went wrong with reality itself. And once you hear what happened, you'll understand why some passengers refuse to fly anymore. Let's go back to the flight from the opening. United Flight 1267, Los Angeles to Chicago, March 2018. The flight attendant's name was Nicole Martinez. She'd been flying for 12 years. Never experienced anything like this. After the flight landed, the airline launched an investigation. They pulled the black box recordings. The voice was there. Clear as day. Nicole's voice making announcements she never made. But here's what made investigators' blood run cold. The voice announced, "We're going down in 17 minutes, at exactly 2:47 p.m. At 3:04 p.m., 17 minutes later, the plane experienced sudden catastrophic hydraulic failure. The kind that should have caused a crash. The pilots managed to regain control through emergency procedures that shouldn't have worked. They landed safely. But they came within seconds of going down. The voice knew. Somehow, impossibly, the voice knew what was about to happen 17 minutes before it happened. And it used Nicole's voice to warn everyone. The airline classified it as an intercom malfunction. But they couldn't explain how a malfunction predicted mechanical failure 17 minutes in advance. Couldn't explain how it generated a perfect replica of Nicole's voice saying words she never said. Nicole quit 6 months later. Said she couldn't shake the feeling that something used her. Borrowed her voice to deliver a warning. She doesn't know what or why. Just knows that everyone on that plane should be dead. And something prevented it. Now let me tell you about Delta Flight 5893, Atlanta to Seattle, June 2015. 212 passengers. 6 crew members. Routine flight. Until 11:37 p.m., when a child's voice came over the intercom. Singing a lullaby. Hush little baby, don't say a word. The flight attendants looked at each other in confusion. No children were in the cockpit. The voice continued for the entire song. Then stopped. Passengers started asking questions. Crew assured them it was a malfunction. But 15 minutes later, the voice came back. This time it wasn't singing. It was counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. Counting slowly. Deliberately. It got to 17 and stopped. Then a different voice, an adult woman, said, 17 minutes until impact. Prepare yourselves. Mass panic. People screaming. Praying. Writing goodbye messages to loved ones. The pilots checked everything. All systems normal. No warnings. No issues. They radioed ground control. Everything checked out. 17 minutes passed. Nothing happened. The flight continued normally and landed safely. But here's what investigators found. At exactly the moment the child's voice started singing, the plane's transponder briefly went offline. For 43 seconds, the plane disappeared from radar. When it came back, everything was normal. But during those 43 seconds, the plane should have collided with another aircraft that was crossing their flight path. The other plane's crew reported seeing Flight 5893 and taking evasive action. But Flight 5893's crew never saw the other plane. Never received a collision warning. It's like the plane existed in 2 different realities for 43 seconds. In one reality, it was about to crash. In another, it was fine. The voice came from the reality where it crashed. Came to warn the passengers in the reality where it didn't. That's the only explanation that makes sense. And it makes no sense at all. Let's talk about what happened on Southwest Flight 2156, Phoenix to Denver, November 2019. This one is different because the voice didn't use the intercom. It spoke directly to passengers. Every passenger heard it at the same time. But they each heard it differently. Some heard it as a whisper in their ear. Some heard it inside their heads. Some heard it coming from empty seats. But they all heard the same words, "Don't look out the window." Passengers who ignored the warning and looked out the window reported seeing things that shouldn't exist. One woman said she saw faces pressed against the outside of the plane. Another man said he saw something moving on the wing. A child said he saw another plane flying upside down right next to them. But passengers who didn't look out the window saw nothing unusual. The flight crew saw nothing unusual. External cameras showed nothing unusual. The passengers who looked describe it as seeing something that existed in a different layer of reality. Something that was there but shouldn't be visible. And the voice was trying to protect them from seeing it. The flight landed without incident. But several passengers who looked out the window reported nightmares for months afterward. Recurring dreams of being outside the plane. Floating in the sky. Seeing things that don't belong in our world. One passenger required psychiatric treatment. Said he couldn't shake the feeling that what he saw was more real than reality. That we're the ones who don't belong. And whatever was outside that window was showing him the truth. Here's a case that involved a voice giving specific instructions. American Airlines Flight 788, Boston to Miami, February 2017. Mid-flight, a calm male voice came over the intercom. "This is your captain speaking. We need everyone to move to the rear of the aircraft immediately. Leave your belongings. Move now." Passengers started to comply, but the flight attendant stopped them. They were confused. The captain hadn't made any announcement. They called the cockpit. The captain and co-pilot both confirmed they hadn't said anything. But passengers insisted they all heard it. The voice came back, more urgent. "You have 4 minutes. Move to the rear now. This is not a drill." Some passengers started moving despite crew protests. Others stayed in their seats. It created chaos. The pilots decided to make an actual announcement, confirming they hadn't said anything and asking everyone to remain seated. But 3 minutes later, the front cargo hold exploded. A lithium battery in checked luggage had caught fire. The explosion damaged the front of the plane. If passengers had been in the forward cabin, many would have been killed or injured. As it was, the passengers who'd moved to the rear were safe. The plane made an emergency landing. Everyone survived. The voice saved lives by moving people away from the explosion before it happened. The FAA investigated extensively. No explanation. The voice wasn't the captain. Wasn't any crew member. Wasn't from ground control. It came from nowhere. But it knew. For minutes before the explosion, it knew. Now let me tell you about a flight where the voice revealed something impossible. JetBlue Flight 4421, New York to Orlando, August 2016. A woman's voice came over the intercom speaking in a language no one recognized. Not Spanish. Not French. Not any identifiable language. It spoke for 2 minutes straight. When it stopped, passengers looked at each other confused. Then one passenger, a linguistics professor, went pale. She said she recognized some of the linguistic structures. It was similar to Latin. But older. Much older. She said it sounded like what ancient languages might have sounded like before they diverged into different families. She couldn't translate it, but she recognized patterns. The voice came back 3 more times during the flight. Each time, the linguistics professor tried to make sense of it. She said one phrase was repeated. Something that phonetically sounded like, tempus non existit hic. She thought it might mean, time does not exist here. The flight landed normally. But here's the strange part, the flight's black box recording showed the flight took 6 hours and 42 minutes. But every clock on board, every passenger's watch, every phone, showed only 3 hours and 15 minutes had passed. The time discrepancy was never explained. Passengers insisted they'd only been in the air for 3 hours. Felt like 3 hours. But the recording and ground control logs showed nearly 7 hours. The linguistics professor believes the voice was trying to tell them something about time. About how it works differently at altitude. Or how it worked differently for that specific flight. She's written papers about it. But mainstream academia dismisses her. Because accepting her theory means accepting that time isn't constant. That it can bend. And that something or someone was trying to warn passengers about that. Let's discuss a voice that gave a warning no one understood until it was too late. Frontier Flight 623, Las Vegas to Dallas, April 2018. A voice came over the intercom speaking in perfect English. But what it said made no sense. The reflection will show the truth. Don't trust what you see directly. Passengers laughed it off. Thought it was a prank. Then during the flight, multiple passengers noticed something strange. When they looked at other passengers directly, everything seemed normal. But when they looked at reflections in windows or phone screens, the reflections were different. One man said he looked at the passenger next to him and saw a normal businessman. But in the window reflection, that same passenger looked different. Older. Wearing different clothes. Several passengers reported similar experiences. The reflections showed different versions of people. And some reflections showed empty seats where passengers were sitting. The flight landed safely, but one passenger was missing. A woman who'd been on the manifest never got off the plane. Her seat was empty. Her luggage was never claimed. Security footage showed her boarding but never deplaning. She vanished. And passengers who'd noticed the reflection discrepancies said her reflection was one of the empty seats. The reflection showed the truth, she was never really there. Or she stopped being there mid-flight. The voice tried to warn them. But no one understood until a woman disappeared into thin air. Here's what all these cases have in common: the voices knew things. Things they shouldn't know. Future events. Hidden dangers. Time anomalies. Reality discrepancies. It's like the voices exist outside normal causality. They can see what's coming. See what's hidden. See the truth beneath the surface. And for reasons we can't understand, they sometimes warn us. Use our intercoms. Use our voices. Speak in our heads. Whatever it takes to deliver the message. Aviation authorities don't know what to do with these reports. Can't explain them. Can't prevent them. Can't even acknowledge them officially without sounding insane. So they classify them as equipment malfunctions. Collective hallucinations. Anything that fits the rational framework. But the passengers and crew who experience them know different. They know something is out there. Something that exists in the spaces between. Something that sometimes reaches out to warn us. Or save us. Or maybe just remind us that reality is stranger than we think. The flight attendants and pilots who've experienced these phenomena say it changes you. Makes you aware that you're operating in a space where normal rules don't always apply. Where time might not be constant. Where reality might have layers. Where voices from nowhere might save your life. Some request ground duty after these experiences. Can't handle flying anymore. Others become almost philosophical about it. Say if something out there is looking out for us, that's comforting in a strange way. But all of them agree, when everyone on a flight hears the same impossible voice, you listen. Because it's trying to tell you something. And ignoring it might be the last mistake you make. So the next time you're on a flight and you hear an announcement that seems off, that doesn't quite make sense, pay attention. Look around. See if other passengers heard it too. See if the crew looks confused. Because it might not be a malfunction. It might be a warning. It might be something trying to save your life or show you a truth you're not supposed to see. And whether you believe that's possible or not doesn't matter. The voices don't need your belief. They just need you to listen. Because at 35,000 feet, between Earth and sky, in that space where humans were never meant to be, strange things happen. Impossible things. And sometimes, those impossible things speak. And everyone hears them. And no one can explain why.